What if one supplement could make your entire immune system smarter? Not stronger, in an aggressive way, smarter. That's exactly what BWH 85 beta glucan from BWH Labs does. It works with your immune system, helping it recognize threats, respond effectively, and protect you the way nature intended. BWH Labs has spent over 25 years perfecting the purest, most biologically active beta-glucan on the market, an 85% pure formula that's been tested against 200 competitors and named the most effective immune modulator in peer-reviewed research. The science speaks for itself, just one ingredient, one focus. Unmatched results. Doctors and integrative health practitioners trust BWH 85 beta-glucan, and so do I. It's available in 100 milligrams for daily support or 500 milligrams for maximum immune defense. It's only available through health practitioners, but as an intelligent medicine listener, it's available to you through my full script dispensary. Just go to drhoffman.com/BWH for more information and to order. That's drhoffman.com/BWH. Because a smarter immune system starts with one smart choice. Welcome to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hoffman. You know, intelligent medicine is about the best of high-tech medicine, the best of natural therapies. We often talk about natural therapies. We talk about diet, lifestyle, certain innovative supplements, various healthy practices. We talk about things like acupuncture and yoga. But we also have room to talk about extraordinary medical innovations, the best of high-tech. And I think today is going to be an example of that. It was Walt Whitman who back in the 19th century famously said, "I sing the body electric." And for a long time, there's been a fascination with the potential for electricity to have a beneficial effect on the human body. And there have been all kinds of devices, sometimes quacky devices that are designed to, do whatever. And through the ages, in fact, hearkening back to Mary Wollstonecraft Frankenstein, they harnessed lightning to invigorate corpses, and thus was born the Frankenstein monster. And they had this guy way back when, Luigi Galvani, who did experiments with frog legs, and he got frog legs to dance with electrical current. But we come a long way since then with some very, very precise therapies that may revolutionize our approach to autoimmune and inflammatory disorders. With us today is Dr. David Chernoff. He's an MD, Chief Medical Officer of an outfit called SetPoint Medical. And SetPoint is in the lead in applying vagal nerve stimulation therapy. It's electrically driven to treat various medical conditions. He has 25 years of experience in molecular diagnostics and in biopharmaceutical arena, and he is also formerly VP of Corp Technology at Elan Pharma and medical director at Chiron Corp. So he heads up currently an outfit called SetPoint Medical. He's Chief Medical Officer. So without further ado, here's Dr. David Chernoff. Dr. Chernoff, it's a pleasure.
Dr. Hoffman, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a fascinating story, which I'm happy to share with you.
Okay, well, so give us a little bit of background. First of all, I have famously said, I learned a little bit about this in medical school, but I haven't the vaguest idea what the vagus nerve does. So explain it to me like I'm in, junior high school.
Yeah, so the vagus nerve is one of 12 cranial nerves. And when we were in med school, we had to always memorize these mnemonics, like, vagus, etc.
On Mount Olympus, something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
and
I forgot
it's called a 10th cranial nerve. And you have two of them, left and right. And it's interesting, it's the longest cranial nerve in the body. It's not the longest nerve in the body, that's a sacral nerve, but what it does is as it exits the brain stem, left and right side, it arborizes like a tree and basically interacts with almost every organ in the body. And the vagus comes from the Latin wandering, because the nerve, and when you look at these old Vesalius dissection models, you see this very extensive tree, which is the vagus nerve. And the question is, why does it do that? And what is its function? And it turns out that 80% of the vagus trunk and fibers are sensory. The rest are motor. And so, what are the sensory fibers doing? They're basically monitoring the status of all your organs. It's a process which biologists call enteroception, where your internal organs are being monitored by the vagus sensory fibers. And the purpose for that is, if there's a perturbation, an injury, an infection, some sort of inflammatory situation, those sensory fibers will pick up that signal and rapidly send signals to specific regions in the brainstem, which act as immunologic rheostats. They process that information very quickly, and then they send signals back through the vagus to the spleen to instruct the immune system on what sort of immune response is appropriate for that particular stimulus. So this is an innate immediate response to injury. And what Dr. Tracy, who's the godfather of this field, discovered was that you can actually stimulate the vagus to recapitulate that process in patients with autoimmune disease where it seems to be dysfunctional. Something that we're not taught in med school. It's not a part of our training where we find a disease and a disordered, a dysregulated pathway, then we find a drug, an antibody, or a small molecule to block that pathway, and hopefully that the side effect profile is acceptable. But that is how we are trained in Western medicine. That is not how Eastern medicine, with electroacupuncture, which I've had myself for injuries, where they were aware of these pathways a long time ago, and we're just
Mhm.
catching up to them now.
Right. I remember, having studied acupuncture as well. Uh, there's this point in the ear. It's called
Exactly.
Shen Men, which is
Yeah.
translates to a pleasure point that
Yeah.
helps to alleviate craving. I mean, sometimes we put needles in there for smoking cessation,
Yeah.
or for there's even a clinic. There was famously a clinic that was headed by a Dr. Smith up in Harlem. I think it was Harlem Hospital. That was a detox clinic for addicts where they actually did acupuncture in their ear, and they thought that there was a branch of the vagal
Right.
nerve to the ear or
Yes.
something like that was going on.
Yeah, I think, the vagus has otic branches that go to both ears, and the ear has been mapped out with exquisite detail. And there's a center part of the ear called the cymba concha where a lot of these fibers exist. So that's what acupuncturists believe to do when they have needles in your ear. There are some vibrating earpieces that people use, but it's a way of accessing vagal strands without having to do something invasive. And we'll come back to why invasive versus non-invasive. But yeah, the traditional Chinese medicine knew about this a long time ago.
So, but precision medicine, uh, we now use a more precise technique to use the exact form of electrical impulse
Right.
that can best send signals to the organs. And how did we get from, ear acupuncture to
Yeah.
these very sophisticated devices?
Yeah. So when Dr. Tracy, who's a neurosurgeon
Who's
in
been
New
a guest
York,
here on Intelligent Medicine already?
yeah,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and he was at the forefront of discovering the TNF pathways, its role in sepsis. But when he moved to Long Island to the Feinstein Institute, he led a group that made some really startling discoveries that if you were to cut the vagus in an infection model, the animals almost die instantly. So the vagus is doing something that is helping the animal recover. If you stimulate the vagus in those situations, you have an antibiotic-like
Hmm.
effect. So this discovery, which was made over 25 years ago, um, people sort of forgot about it because it wasn't actionable. In other words, you read about this pathway and, oh, that's great, but it doesn't help me treat my patients. Over many years, with a lot of scientists, he mapped out the exact parameters that are necessary to stimulate the vagus, the frequency, the intensity, how long, how often in rodent models and in humans, and that foundational scientific background allowed SetPoint to optimize the parameters that we use in our human clinical studies. So there was a lot of work done. It's almost like you discover a new pathway, you block it with a new blocker, you look at the impact of different levels in rodents, and you figure out what's acceptable in humans. All of that was done with this vagus nerve stimulator over several decades before we actually got into the clinic and started doing this.
So there's actually a couple of obstacles, though, to implementation because all this research is great. But number one, uh, can it be approved by the FDA? Because this is a medical device, it requires
Yeah,
approval. Number two, is it commercially viable? Is
yeah.
this something that, you can build a company around? And is this going to be adopted by hospitals and
Right.
doctors as a procedure that actually gets an insurance code? That's another aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's critically important because without reimbursement,
Yeah.
no one's going to get this. Well, what's interesting about vagus nerve stimulation is old news. I'm not trying to be pejorative or anything. For the last 25 years, functional neurosurgeons have been operating on the vagus specifically to put a neurostimulator in for the treatment of drug refractory epilepsy.
Hmm.
It's a big battery
Hmm.
with coils and wires that go up into your neck. And there are over 200,000
It
patients in
prevents
the
seizures.
US.
It prevents.
It prevents seizures. About a third of patients with seizures are drug refractory. They put this device in, they learned how to operate on the vagus. So when we came back many years later with this miniaturized wireless device, they know how to do the cut down. They know exactly how to operate on the vagus. The only thing they had to learn was how to put our little device in, which doesn't require wires. So we went to the experts who do these operations and said, you've been doing this, you've done, the guy at NYU had done 2,000 procedures. He could do it basically in his sleep, but he had to learn how to manipulate our little pod. So we had this advantage of knowing the safety of this procedure over many years. And when we went to the FDA, one of the things we said that de-risks this program is that operating on the vagus is standard fare in neurosurgery. The only thing that's different is we have a different device. So that was to our advantage.
So what you decided to tackle was one of the most challenging inflammatory disorders, which is rheumatoid arthritis. So how did
Right.
that come to be? And it is now approved as a
All right.
treatment for rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, I came out to UCSF from NYU to do my medical training and then rheumatology training in a research lab and had rheumatology patients. And a lot has happened over many years. The therapies are a lot better than we used to give gold injections and crazy things. But still, a substantial number of patients either have inadequate responses or fail to respond or get infections.
Mhm.
So these drugs, and I
They're
have
in
to,
effect they're immunosuppressed. So the
they're
therapy
immunosuppressive.
suppresses the inflammation, but it renders them more vulnerable to sometimes very weird infections, tuberculosis and fungal
Exactly.
infections and things like that.
Yeah, you have to get a special TB test called quantiferon before you put it on them because you don't want to reactivate latent
Yeah.
TB. So there was an unmet medical need. And about 15 years ago, a group in Amsterdam that SetPoint worked with in the early days did a very interesting experiment that was published in PNAS back in 2016. They took these devices that are approved for epilepsy by a company called Cyberonics, and our scientists modified the stimulation parameters to for the specific reason of treating inflammation. We had done it in animals. We implanted about 17 patients with bad RA with this modified reprogrammed device and turned it on for 6 weeks and turned it off. And lo and behold, the disease activity in these patients went down dramatically with daily stimulation.
Hmm.
And when they turned it off, the disease came back and they turned it back on. So this was the first example of taking implantable device for epilepsy, modifying it for autoimmune disease. And the reason that was interesting is that for some reason in RA and in other autoimmune diseases, there is a dysregulation of the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. There, if you look at heart rate variability, low heart rate variability means low parasympathetic tone.
Mm-hmm.
When you increase parasympathetic tone, you increase heart rate variability. These patients, even before they got RA, had distinct abnormalities in their heart rate variability. So they had a dysautonomia, basically. Now, we can't, that doesn't mean that it's true and related. It might be associated. But there were all these signs that there was some sort of sympathetic parasympathetic imbalance, and that by stimulating the vagus and stimulating the parasympathetic system and acetylcholine, we could restore that balance. That's why we call ourselves set point, because everyone has an immunologic set point that gets dysregulated. So on the basis of those discoveries and work that was done in the Netherlands, the company and the engineers designed this incredible space age like tablet. It looks like a multivitamin, which it can be charged with an external charger, no wires, like an iPhone. And we've had one of these devices in a patient for now 10 years.
So it's very miniature. It's not like a big box like old-fashioned pacemakers.
It's about the size of a multivitamin. And when you put it in, you can't see or feel it because the vagus is about 2 to 3 centimeters deep. And they do the incision in such a way where there isn't a visible scar.
So, and there's no external wires or anything.
There's no wires.
Okay.
The epilepsy device has a battery in your chest that has to be removed every couple and replaced.
Okay.
It has wires and coils. This thing looks like a little like a multivitamin, and it's surrounded by a little silicon pod that holds it in place. And again, one of our early patients that was implanted almost 10 years ago still has hers in, still functioning.
And it's not rejected by the body as a foreign material.
It's not seen by the body. And you can program it with an iPad. So it's kind of like having an implantable chip that you can customize for the patient's autoimmune disease. We've also done a study in Crohn's disease with this modified device. We published that recently, and it worked in Crohn's. And we've now started a multiple sclerosis study based on some very interesting preclinical findings. So I think, whether or not this will be revolutionary remains to be determined. But fundamentally, it's taking a very different approach to autoimmune disease. It's saying your body normally can regulate all these things. And for some reason, autoimmune disease, it's dysregulated. Rather than throw toxins in to block the pathways, we're going to try to rebalance that system using the cervical vagus and see whether or not we can see in the blood that we reduce cytokines and pro-inflammatory cytokines. So it requires a fundamental shift in your thinking about how to approach diseases. And for most of us who are trained in Western medicine, it's scary and it's difficult because that's not how we're always taught. Like, you're going to develop a new aspirin, a new nonsteroidal, a new monoclonal, a new JAK inhibitor, and we know that they all have side effects. And I caused lots of GI bleedings in my patients who were taking all these things. But it requires proof, and we did a very rigorous 242 patient study with blinding, and we have data out to 2 years to show that this was safe and effective. And we got approval last year for treating RA.
Fantastic. Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors an opportunity to share an important message with you. So here goes. Please listen up. What if one supplement could make your entire immune system smarter? Not stronger, in an aggressive way, smarter. That's exactly what BWH 85 beta-glucan from BWH Labs does. It works with your immune system, helping it recognize threats, respond effectively, and protect you the way nature intended. BWH Labs has spent over 25 years perfecting the purest, most biologically active beta-glucan on the market, an 85% pure formula that's been tested against 200 competitors and named the most effective immune modulator in peer-reviewed research. The science speaks for itself, just one ingredient, one focus. Unmatched results. Doctors and integrative health practitioners trust BWH 85 beta-glucan, and so do I. It's available in 100 milligrams for daily support or 500 milligrams for maximum immune defense. It's only available through health practitioners, but as an intelligent medicine listener, it's available to you through my full-script dispensary. Just go to drhoffman.com/BWH for more information and to order. That's drhoffman.com/BWH. Because a smarter immune system starts with one smart choice.
Are you ready to experience the future of digestive wellness with Dr. Ohhira's new and revolutionary postbiotic fermented food concentrate? Capsule-free and in individual sachet packets that harness the power of 5 years of fermentation and over 500 concentrated bioactive postbiotics. Dr. Ohhira's postbiotic fermented food concentrate is a nutrient-dense paste designed to supercharge your digestive health, aid in nutrient absorption, and support whole-body immune wellness. Each sachet packet delivers a potent blend of fermented paste and prebiotics which serve as fuel for your body's own unique gut microbiome. This concentrate supports your entire digestive tract, does not need refrigeration, non-GMO, dairy, and gluten-free. Dr. Ohhira's postbiotic fermented food concentrate. It is the ultimate embodiment of traditional Japanese fermented craftsmanship, designed for those who seek the highest concentration of nature's restorative power in every serving. Ask your natural products retailer for it today or online at essentialformulas.com.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. They are what make Intelligent Medicine a continuing free resource with great guests like today's guest, Dr. David Chernoff. What does it entail? Some people might be gun shy. It requires an operation to insert this. Is it a big deal? Is it done under anesthesia? How does that work?
Yeah, so the procedure itself is pretty straightforward. I've actually scrubbed in on cases, and it's almost like a textbook. They do a cut down in the neck, they dissect down to the carotid and the
under general anesthesia or local?
Under general anesthesia.
Okay, yep, okay.
And then they put the pod in, they sew it back up. It takes about 45 minutes. It's done as an outpatient, so it's a come-and-go procedure.
So in and out in the day. You don't have to stay in the hospital.
You don't stay in the hospital. And the safety of this procedure, based on 25 years of experience operating in the Vegas, it's extremely safe. There are serious adverse event rates in the 2%, which mainly is some vocal cord dysfunction or hoarseness after the procedure that goes away. We've never seen infections. We've never seen the device displaced. And once it heals, the patient goes back to the rheumatologist who is taught how to program the device and adjust it. So no operation is trivial, but this is not, the device that's used for epilepsy requires putting a battery in your chest, attaching wires, pulling the wires up into your neck, putting coils around your vagus. And if it breaks, it's complicated to replace it. So this is
it's like when a pacemaker breaks it. That whole thing.
Yeah, so it has no leads and no wires.
Yeah. So what about the zapping part? I mean, does it hurt? Do you perceive that you're getting zapped? How much of the time do you get zapped? Is it throughout the day or just some of the time?
So that's critically important because it also has to do with how safe is it to do this. Where you causes vasovagal syncope in patients.
Where you cause
bradycardia or
like off-target effects. Yeah,
exactly. So what the scientists at the Feinstein and scientists that work at SetPoint determined that it only needs to be on for a very brief period of time in a 24-hour cycle. And you might find this hard to believe, but it's only on for 1 minute per day.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
And we did a lot of work to justify that dosing. And the pulse parameters are such where there's a very low rate of off-target effects. One, because it's only on for 1 minute a day, and two, of the frequency and the intensity of the stimulation. The patient can feel it. And what we do with these electrical devices is we titrate the dosing to what's called the upper comfort level. And let me explain what that means. The device goes in, they heal, the patient comes back, the doctor now activates this device, starts to program it, and starts the stimulation at a very low level,
Hmm.
about 500 microamps. And that's sufficient to activate this system. And then over a period of a couple of days to a week, we gradually increase it, like with a rheostat, the amount of energy going in from 500 to 750 to 1000. And we ask the patient, does that hurt? Is your voice hoarse? Are you having difficulty swallowing? And most patients are able to tolerate an up titration. And when they say that it's beginning to be a little bit uncomfortable, we dial it back, and that's their upper comfort level.
Hmm.
So you can't like turn the device on and
Yeah.
defibrillate the
Yeah.
patient.
Yeah.
So it's very, and you can turn it on. We turned it on for the clinical trial very early in the morning, so nobody knew. But you definitely can feel it. It
Hmm.
feels
Like a tingly kind of feeling sensation.
tingling,
Yeah.
tingling.
Yeah.
So your
Yeah.
voice might change a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
So
But it's a very short duration. It's only once a day. So the suggestion is that people not necessarily do that when they're driving or when they're doing something that requires focus and concentration.
yeah, we tell people don't do it while you're eating because we don't want you to potentially aspirate. But it's on, and some patients really enjoy the feeling,
Hmm.
like I'm getting my dose.
Yeah.
The other thing about this approach, which is different than pharmaceuticals, is that once the device is functioning properly and programmed, it's going to keep delivering doses until the doctor or the patient says, I don't want this thing doing it anymore. So that basically means that compliance is built in. So we know that they got a dose of electricity, how many days in a
Yeah.
row. And compliance for a lot of patients, we all know from taking medications, they are supposed to take methotrexate once a week, then they have to inject themselves with biologics every 2 or 4 weeks for the rest of their lives. And that, when you look at the persistence and the longevity on any rheumatic drug, 50% of the people are not taking whatever you prescribe them after
Yeah.
2 years.
Plus, they
There's a
don't have to
huge
keep
number.
going back to the pharmacy and with a
That's
big
right.
copay. It's one and done, right?
Right.
I mean, except for the monitoring that
The
it may.
monitoring is very simple,
Yeah.
and Medicare pays for it, so there's no pre-authorization. About half the RA patients are over
Hmm.
65, and the rest who are under 65, who are not disabled, who have private insurance. It's typical, like when the first time something comes out, the insurance AI bots, reject it, and we do the appeal, and we usually win those appeals, so that the patient, isn't out of pocket for anything.
Indeed. All right. Great. We've laid down the groundwork for our discussion in part two, and I got a lot more questions, and also about you know additional potential applications of this type of therapy, because I think the principle, proof of principle, it works in one of the most challenging inflammatory disorders, but there's commonalities among many
Right,
inflammatory disorders. And we're going to
right.
explore some of those possibilities in part two with today's guest, Dr. David Chernoff, who is Chief Medical Officer of SetPoint Medical. Give us the heads up on your website, because can patients find out more about this
Yeah,
therapy?
so if they go to the SetPoint Medical website, there's patient link, there's links to articles that have been published,
There's an
and
FAQ, frequently asked
there's
questions. Yeah.
FAQ, and how, if you're interested in this therapy, where it's available. It's not available everywhere yet because it's still early. And that way process can start. What was interesting, we tried this out during our clinical trial where we recruited 242 people. We had over 20,000 RA patients try to sign up for that study,
It's like a
shocking everybody.
stampede.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you go, like, the docs go, where did these people come from? And I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is, even though we're extremely well trained and Ivy League, et cetera, and we think we're all great, there are a lot of patients out there who don't like what we're giving them. And these are the patients that came to our study because they either didn't get results or they had problems with conventional therapy. And we're not trying to dismiss conventional therapy, but it doesn't work for everybody. And a lot of patients are afraid when they see the direct-to-consumer Skyrizi and Rinvoq, and all they hear is that they're going to get cancer they're going to get a serious infection or they're going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
So those patients really would like to have an alternative, and that's what we've been providing them.
Indeed. All right. So the website is setpointmedical.com.
Medical.com. Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. All right. We'll be back with more on this fascinating subject. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast.